All right, welcome. So I just want to make a quick video going over some of the steps we did in class solving this problem. So to review, we wanted to find the smallest positive number x. I'm going to highlight this. I've got some notes written. This is most of what we've done in class already. We want to find the smallest positive number x so that when we look at this function, sine of pi over 6x minus 7 pi, that we actually get a maximum. Right? And so it turns out, I'll just tell you now, we checked it on a computer and the answer is going to be 9. Okay, so we sort of looked at our graph here, and if we graph it on a computer, we could sort of see that we have a minimum down here, and then we have a maximum, and this maximum happens at 9. This minimum actually happens at 3. And our goal is to try and understand this without the help of Desmos, or without the help of a graphing calculator. And so what we did was we said, okay, well, imagine we didn't know that. Imagine we didn't know where those numbers were. Well, we would still know that basically every trig function like sine or cosine, it's basically a wave. It goes up and it goes down. And if our strategy is going to be to find those points where the tangent line is horizontal, we're going to find all of these points where we get max or min or max or min, max or min. And we should expect to get infinitely many answers, right? This keeps repeating itself. It's going to happen a lot. And so what we do is we take our function. It's up here at the top, y equals sine of pi over 6x minus 7 pi. We take the derivative using the chain rule. So that's going to be down here. Let me highlight this in orange. So we're going to set that derivative equal to 0. What will happen is we'll divide by this pi over 6. That's what's happened here. So now we're basically solving cosine of pi over 6x minus 7 pi equals 0. So what we're trying to solve is cosine of something equals 0. So that's what I've written down here, this cosine of blah equals 0. And remember, when we look at a cosine graph, maybe it's actually good to just add an extra slide here. This will be good with the graph paper. That if I think about the cosine graph, it kind of goes up and down. Well, when is that cosine going to be 0? Well, it's going to be 0 at this point, which is pi over 2, at this point, which is 3 pi over 2, at this point, which is 5 pi over 2, 7 pi over 2, etc. And the same happens in reverse, right? So the same at negative pi over 2, negative 3 pi over 2, etc. And so what do we see? We see cosine of blah is 0 if blah is basically an odd number times pi over 2. So if we have some number k, that's an odd number. So if we have an odd integer times pi over 2, we plug that into cosine, we're going to get 0. So let's go back to our problem. So this is exactly what we said. We know that cosine of blah is going to be 0 when blah is an odd number times pi over 2. It can be positive, could be negative. And so now let's see how this helps. Well, what we want is our blah. Well, what is our blah? Our blah is equal to pi over 6 times x minus 7 pi. So we're going to set that equal to our odd number times pi over 2. We're going to solve for x. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that 7 pi on the other side. We're going to multiply both sides by 6. This is where we multiplied by 6. We're going to divide by pi. If you want to check all of this, you can pause the video. It would be great to practice your algebra skills. If not, you can just trust that once you solve everything, we get x equals 3k plus 42, where k is an odd number. Right? And now we can play around. We can say, well, what happens if k is different numbers? For instance, what if k is negative 1? Well, if k is negative 1, then I guess x would be 39. And if k is negative 3, then x is going to be 33. We've got this formula up here for x in terms of k. In fact, if you keep going, the smallest positive values we get for x are going to be 3 and 9. Right? And so what do we know? Well, in conclusion, we know that when x is 3, 9, or 15, all of these numbers that are in our list, we know that our function is going to have a horizontal tangent line. But is it going to be a max or is it going to be a min? In other words, going back to our picture, maybe our graph looks like this, where first it goes down to 3, and then it comes back up to 9, and then it comes back up to, sorry, maybe it goes down when we go to 3, and then it has its maximum at 9, or maybe it's reversed, right? Maybe it goes up to a max at 3, and then down to a min at 9. And so, to figure out which of those it is, sorry, I've actually recorded this video already, and then it didn't have any sound, so I'm making it again. So let me just erase some of this work down here. So how do we know which of the two cases we're in? Well, I would recommend, we know that the first 2 points where we get either a max or a min, they're going to be 3 or 9. And so I recommend just plugging in, let's plug in 3, and see if we get positive or negative. See if we get plus or minus 1. Right? And if we get a positive 1, then that's going to be our first max. We're going to be in the second picture. And if we get a negative number, we're going to be in our first picture. And so to do that, we just check y is going to be sine of pi over 6 times x, so that's 3 minus 7 pi. So I'm going to multiply that. I'm going to get sine of pi over 2 minus 7 pi. And now, well, we could reach for a calculator. We're going to see the answer is -1. I'll just sort of tell you that that's the answer, is -1. And that's going to mean that we are in this first situation up here. So our answer is that x equals 3 gives a min. Let's see, gives a minimum value. And x equals 9 gives a maximum value. And so x equals 9 is going to be our smallest positive number x that gives a maximum. And this is a little bit annoying to try and do without a calculator, but basically what I would do is I would maybe just think about the unit circle, and I would think about where we are. So I would say this is saying pi over 2, so that's like 90 degrees. And then this is saying subtract 7 times 180. So this is minus 7 times 180. Remember, pi radians is 180 degrees. And so I would sort of say, well, we start up here at 90 degrees. And what we do is then we subtract 180 degrees and we do it 7 times. So let's see. So if I'm going backwards, I'm going to be moving down. Let me maybe actually try highlighting this, see if that works. So I'm going to be going negative. I do 180. I did it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, and where do I wind up? So after I do it 7 times, I hope you could see that animation. So after 7 times, I wind up down here. And so what is that? That's going to be negative pi over 2. So this should be the same as sine of negative pi over 2, which is -1. And again, we can read that off the unit circle because the sine of an angle is going to be the y-coordinate of that point. So there's a lot of stuff in this video. There's a huge trig review. There was solving trig functions equal to 0, going through some algebra. There's a lot going on in this. If there's a certain part of this you'd like to focus on and come talk about it in office hours or leave a comment, that would be great. Otherwise, have a great day. Bye.